you've written books on poetry.
I have.
What is poetry, and what do you like it?
Well, poetry at its best is the distillation of language in pursuit of beauty.
What a beautiful phrase.
Yeah, there's no superfluous...
distillation of language in search of beauty. Did you just spit that out, or is that a...
I just spat that out.
That's very good.
Well, thank the giver of the gift. But there should be no superfluous word. If there's a word out of place or an extra word didn't need to be there, it's bad poetry. Every word is exactly where it should be, and then you've got on top of where the words are, you've got the meter, the rhyme, the onomatopoeia, the alliteration. It's music. It's the best that language can be.
Mm. The only poem I've memorized is by The World is Charged with the Grandeur of God.
Yeah, Hopkins. It's wonderful. Yeah, it is a wonderful poem.
What do you think about modern poetry? Like, have you ever tried to enjoy modern poetry written by kind of secular modernist type people? Have you ever tried? Because I know, the knee-jerk reaction is it must all be crap. But have you tried reading?
Well, again, I mean, obviously, I'm a literary historian. The modernist movement really begins in poetry, begins with people like T.S. Eliot, who I love. So T.S. Eliot broke rules, right?
Okay.
And that's those that formalists, those that think the form of the poetry is crucial, didn't like what Eliot was doing because he was breaking. He's a bit like jazz music.
Yeah.
Right. So jazz music.
Jazz
well,
music.
that's the whole
point. Do you hate it?
No, I don't. I don't hate jazz music. No, I like jazz music. But you have to sort of play with the form in order to get the jazz. Basically that's what Eliot's doing. And a poem like The Wasteland is one of my favorite poems, but it was hated at the time. People like Chesterton didn't like it because they thought it was iconoclastic. But it's absolutely what The Wasteland does. He uses the form of disintegration as a way of reflecting the wasteland of modernity. There's no form. The whole thing's collapsing. So he uses a collapsed formlessness, in inverted commas, so there is form to it, but he uses a formlessness as a way of reflecting what he's talking about, which is the wasteland of the modern world. And basically, at the end of the poem, there's a conversion. The only salvation from modernity is faith and baptism and acceptance of the Lord and the peace that comes therefrom.
Okay.
So that's a wonderful poem, but yeah, he's the first modern. So when I
say modern, I'm talking about the last 20 years.
Yeah, no, I edit a magazine called the St. Austin Review. I get sent far more contemporary poems by good, solid Catholic poets that I can possibly publish in the magazine. Most Catholic poets are formalists, so they keep the traditional form, but there are some that don't. Some that sort of are using sort of modern poetic techniques, and if what they're saying is beautiful, in other words, the word choice is important, and what the words are actually meaning is deep, because a poem has to be deep. It has to be inviting you to something contemplative. If it's not, it's a waste of time, right? Unless it's a limerick, it's meant to be funny. But I mean, so if you're not going to use form, what you're saying has to be very profound, and the word choice has to be very good, and then I'll publish it. But generally speaking, my sympathies are with tradition as regards poetic form.
So when I talked about modern poetry, this one came to mind, and this one is probably not at all deep, and doesn't have any form, and yet I just can't help but like it. You ready? You're going to hate it so much. Here we go. This is by William Carlos Williams. Here it is. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. That's it. How much do you hate that? I find it cute. I get why so much depends upon that. That is a beautiful sight.
They are words that lead us to contemplation. I would question whether it's a poem.
Yeah.
Because there's no, I mean, you could
just because you break up sentences into stanzas, it doesn't make.
If you can make it as a grammatical sentence in a single line, it's not a poem.
Yeah.
So it's not a poem, but it is a thought that leads us to contemplation, and it's a beautiful thought that leads us to a beautiful understanding of the beauty in simple things, and how much depends upon the beautiful simplicity of simple things.
Yeah.
Now that's how I like where it leads my mind. But I don't think it's a poem.
No. Good. All right. Yeah. Yeah. It's been pretty. I don't know. I'm sure. Who's the fella? Bob Dylan. When people start talking about Bob Dylan like he's one of the world's greatest poets, I'm like, you don't have to say that.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example.
This is where hyperbole leads you. This is the opposite of what we were saying earlier. When you say that a bad person in history was the devil, you've overplayed your hand, and now you're forcing me to see nuance and goodness in him. Same thing is true. When you say Bob Dylan is up there with the greatest, I was perfectly willing to appreciate his work until you said he was one of the greatest. Now he's crap.
Yeah, I in fact, in some ways, I feel sorry for Bob Dylan because what it really does, it's a judgment upon the Nobel Prize selection people. It just shows that in our woke culture, where beauty is despised, where form is despised, where goodness is despised, where truth is despised, that basically that poetry can be reduced to someone who writes quite good pop rock songs, and several of which probably qualifies poems. But no, writing half a dozen good poems does not make you a Nobel Prize for Literature winner.
Men, have you checked out Exodus 90 lately? If you've heard of Exodus 90 before, you're probably thinking cold showers and Lent, but the Exodus 90 app offers so much more. It's the #1 freedom app to help you become the man you were created to be. I've been following along with the app's daily scriptures, reflections, and disciplines, and it's really awesome. Download the Exodus 90 app today to join St. Michael's Lent, happening now leading up to the Feast of St. Michael the Archangel on September 29th. St. Michael's Lent is an ancient tradition of prayer and fasting popularized by St. Francis in the Middle Ages that's been lost in our time. Let's bring it back. Join the men of Exodus 90 and Father Carlos Martins, exorcist and host of the Exorcist Files, who is the spiritual guide for St. Michael's Lent this year on the Exodus 90 app. We will awaken to invisible realities and enter into that spiritual battle that rages around us. Go to exodus90.com/Matt to join us for St. Michael's Lent. That's exodus90.com/Matt to join us for St. Michael's Lent, happening now on the Exodus 90 app. It's not too late to join.